I'm Jamie Eisenberg. That's Dave Richard. That's Heath Cummings. We have the sits now for week number 3, the players you should be avoiding. And Heath, you're up first. You have the Holy Trinity. The quarterbacks that are all destined for the Hall of Fame, 2 for sure, 1 we expect in terms of Russell Wilson, but Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers are definitely headed there. You're saying to sit them along with James Robinson and Allen Lazard. Let's start with the quarterbacks because a lot of fantasy managers drafted these 3, certainly Brady and Russell Wilson, probably still Aaron Rodgers based on how average draft position told us, to be starting fantasy quarterbacks. And here we are 2 weeks into the season, 2 games into the season, are heading into the 3rd game in week number 3, and now we are, all of us, sitting these 3 guys. What has gone wrong, and is there hope for any of them, maybe this week and certainly in the future?
Well, one thing's gone wrong for all of them, and it's wide receivers. Tom Brady, obviously without Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, we think Julio Jones this week. Aaron Rodgers still missing Devontae Adams. Russell Wilson, we don't think he's going to have Jerry Jeudy, and turns out Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy might not be DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. But for Tom Brady specifically, and this stat comes from Intern Sam, one of my favorite of the week, this Buccaneers offense ranks 24th in the league in first down pass rate. Last year they were 2nd. We've talked all offseason about the one thing we know about Brady. He's running the offense. They're going to throw the ball 720 times. They are not throwing the ball. They're going to be run heavy. I think both the Packers and Tampa Bay. I could see Russell Wilson getting bumped to the top of this list if Jerry Jeudy's back. I'm not 100% sure, and this sounds ridiculous. I still don't know if I'd rank him ahead of Mariota.
It's just crazy to think. Dave, which of these 3, just for a season-long view, you have the most confidence in long-term?
Brady, because he's going to get his guys back. If Brady had a healthy receiving core, it would still be a tough decision on whether or not he makes our top 12 in our rankings. Or I'll speak for myself. It'd be tough. But I know that he can connect with Godwin and connect with Evans and connect with Julio. He doesn't have any of those guys this week. And it's the Packers. That's a tough matchup for him.
It's just amazing. Just amazing that we just can't trust these guys right now. Hopefully things do get better, so make some buy low offers for probably all 3 of them. Look, I think at some point Rodgers, once he starts to connect with the younger receivers,
Watson's got some huge potential.
He'll make some plays down the road. And look, you know, we don't love Allen Lazard this week, but it was 1 game removed after being out with who knows how much of a significant ankle injury that was. And the same thing with Russell Wilson. He'll get better with his receivers being healthy as well. James Robinson has been very good for fantasy managers. You don't like him this week, though.
I don't really like Jacksonville. I think this is a really, really bad spot for them facing a Chargers
Makes sense
team.
how you and Pete Prisco interact.
Exactly, yes. This Chargers defense is very, very good. They've got coming off a long rest, and coming off angry of losing to the Chiefs. The Jacksonville team won their Super Bowl, beat the Colts for like the 17th year in a row. And so I just think this game could go really bad, and it's not like James Robinson's been wildly efficient. He's gotten into the end zone. He's looked good. I'm amazed he's been this good coming off this injury. But he's going to be sharing close to 50-50, and I think they're going to be chasing points in a big way.
I've got him as a low-end number 2 running back this week. I think he's going to end up being okay. I think he's got a chance to score. The weakness of this Chargers defense is their run defense. It's been that way for a while, and I think it's still that way now. We saw Edwards-Helaire even pop off late for a long run, and I think Robinson has looked good at times, and he's looked slow at times. The touchdown he had last week took him an hour and a half to find the end zone there, but he did it. I think he's still worth starting because he's going to have the volume on his side.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned. The score is going to be, I think, the thing that matters the most here. How much will he get in garbage time? Because this should be a game where the Chargers, coming off a loss, short rest, terrible situation for Jacksonville, big win, long road trip. I think the Chargers are going to smash them. This could be a game, hopefully, where Travis Etienne gets some production. I'm just a little bit concerned about both the Jaguars running backs. All right, Dave, let's talk about your sits. You got Aaron Rodgers on your list as well. Interesting couple of running backs here. Josh Jacobs, Cordarrelle Patterson, and then Terry McLaurin and Dawson Knox. So let's start with the running backs here.
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs. It feels like it's a favorable matchup for them against the Titans defense that hasn't been very good. What's your concern about Jacobs?
It feels like a favorable matchup. It is a favorable matchup, but Jacobs hasn't been getting as many opportunities as I'd like to see him get. For example, 13 snaps inside the 10 for Las Vegas this year. Only 4 carries for Jacobs, only 1 yard. No touchdowns. The offensive line has been an issue. Jacobs himself and where he's going with the football has also been an issue. He had 19 carries last week. We love that type of volume. He didn't do anything with it. So I look at him as more of a low-end number 2, high-end number 3 fantasy running back, even with the matchup against Tennessee. I think the Raiders throw on Tennessee.
I think the Raiders will throw on Tennessee, but I have a hard time believing that he's going to continue to see this type of workload. He played 60 and 72% of the snaps. He's eventually going to score some touchdowns. I think he's a 15 to 18 touch guy. It's still too early in the season for me to have just adjusted my efficiency. And to be fair to Jacobs, he's averaging 4.3 yards per carry, and he's turned 2 catches into 28 yards. I don't think he's been terrible.
I'm just so curious to see, because last week was a favorable matchup, at least on paper it was. He didn't have the greatest performance. This week's a favorable matchup. We'll hopefully have a better outcome for him if he doesn't necessarily take advantage of it, are we going to maybe see a little bit more Zamir White? This was my concern coming into the season, that if he's not taking advantage of these situations, will we start to see the rookie take on a little bit more?
I'm worried we might see that this week.
It could happen.
Next week.
It could happen, but we just haven't seen them turn to him yet, and who knows how much they trust Zamir White. But I share some of your concerns. It's just hard to get away from Jacobs in this matchup against the Titans. Talk to me about Cordarrelle Patterson, because this feels like a good opportunity for him, taking on a Seattle defense that has been up and down against the run. And they have a chance to win this game. And we saw in week 1 when they were winning with a big lead. He
had a huge game. It was against New Orleans, and that's a tougher matchup than this one. Saints giving up 4.13 yards per carry to opposing running backs. They've been run at 53 times by opposing running backs. The Seahawks have. Yes, I'm sorry about that. And I think that they're going to continue to see some work. But Tyler Algier had some work last week. As many carries as Cordarrelle Patterson, I think they're going to try and get him involved a little bit more. And I'm definitely disappointed in the lack of involvement in the passing game for Cordarrelle Patterson. We know he can do it. The Falcons aren't doing it. I think I kind of understand why after watching what Drake London did last week and what Kyle Pitts is capable of doing. I think that's where the Falcons go in this game. I think they continue to throw the ball. Mariota can also take away short yardage work from Cordarrelle Patterson. It makes him a nerve-wracking start for me. I called him a bust candidate in SSSB this week. Low end, he's in the same boat as Jacobs. I'd rather start Jacobs. Low end number 2, high end number 3 type of fantasy rusher.
This is one of those guys where I just don't know. Like we thought in week 1, Damian Williams got 2 of the first 3 carries, then he got hurt, and so then we saw 25 touches for Cordarrelle Patterson. They didn't have Algier active in that game. They had Algier active last week, and we see 10 touches for Patterson. That being said, I hate doubting him because every time I've doubted him over the last 2 years, he's mostly been good.
It just feels like I actually don't mind Cordarrelle Patterson. I don't have a lot of faith in Cordarrelle Patterson, but this feels like a game the Falcons can win. I mean, obviously they're on the road. It's not the best scenario, but Seattle's defense not the best. He's going to get a lot of work. I think a lot of that last week was score dictated a little bit as well. So I think we can see a situation where Patterson has a better opportunity if, in fact, they're playing with the lead. So I don't mind him as a low-end number 2 flex play, but we're kind of all in the same boat on this. Let's go to my sits here for week number 3, and the guy who was the best player in fantasy, yes, I'm saying a sit Tua Tagovailoa coming off that 50 fantasy point performance against the Ravens because he's placing the Bills. A.J. Dillon makes me a little bit nervous. Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, you get away from those guys because they haven't exactly been producing. And obviously Elijah Moore is getting outplayed by Garrett Wilson. But let's talk about Tua because he was amazing last week. He just does not have the same matchup. And Buffalo's a little bit banged up. It sounds like they're going to get Matt Milano back, but we don't know about the situation with Micah Hyde. Their cornerback's a little bit banged up as well. I just don't think he's going to have a monster performance. I think he'll be okay. 20 fantasy points is kind of the ceiling. Not the best history against Buffalo, really, for the entire Dolphins franchise since Josh Allen and Sean McDermott have been there. So Tua, for me, he's closer to 12. I don't know who has him closer to 10. I'm going to guess probably you. Yeah, you confident Tua this week?
Yeah, I love the upside. And we just saw it last week against Baltimore when he was blitzed, not blitzed, didn't matter. Man zone, that mattered a little bit more, and certainly against zone, he's worse, and that's what the Bills do a lot of. But the Bills are thin in that cornerback spot. Dane Jackson, he doesn't play.
They're so good up front. They don't give anybody
They are, but Tua went up against the Ravens in their front last week. It's not the same, but it's not terribly far off. And again, when Tua's blitzed, he's come up with big plays, including the touchdowns to Tyreek last week. As long as he's got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, the guy's got a chance for 3 touchdowns and 300 yards.
I do think he's going to throw 40 passes probably. We saw him throw 33 in week 1 against the Patriots team that could not get out of their own way offensively. Threw 50 last week against Baltimore. Maybe it's 41, 42 this week. He won't be as efficient. He's not going to be near as good, but I think he's probably a start. It's a terrible like we just talked about how we're sitting Aaron Rodgers. You're starting him over all those guys.
He's still ranked as a starter for me. It's more of a just slow the roll a little bit. And as I said on our podcast today, if he comes out with another big game, obviously you're starting him the rest of the way. But if he has a bad game, don't panic because this is going to be the best defense he probably plays. It might be the best defense in the NFL. And despite their cornerback woes, 3 interceptions against Matthew Stafford in week 1. They were amazing against the Titans in week 2. He's probably in between those 2 guys, I think, at this point. So I would try to avoid him. As for Breece Hall, look, he scored last week. Michael Carter's still the better of the 2 Jets running backs. This is a tough matchup against the Bengals. Hopefully we see more Breece Hall, but at this point, probably somebody you want to just stay away from. Keep an eye on how he plays. Maybe starts to take a little bit more of the playing time, but still Michael Carter is the better of the 2 running backs right now for the Jets.